Our reading this morning is from Luke's Gospel, chapter 6, beginning on page 32. Jesus is speaking. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even those known as sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies, do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High. For God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your father and mother is merciful. Now, sometimes there's a temptation to go, well, I should be compassionate. You know, the thing is, what we want is one's heart to open and just go, the person is suffering, and there should be no reflection on, they didn't have to suffer if they listened to what I said. If they just did what was right, they wouldn't be suffering. You're like, okay. Wouldn't it be interesting to watch God's analysis of your day and to what degree you did everything that God said you should have? And if at the end of the day, God's like, well, you didn't do that. You know, your thoughts were impure here. You were lazy here. You said you did this, but you didn't. I mean, it's like, so no grace for you. Hey, I tried to warn you. But no, the mercy continues to flow because God accepts the imperfections in people. These kind of incidences are going to happen rampantly in your lives, where you think a person should act this way, and they don't. And then later, there's repercussions because they didn't do what you thought they should have. And then we become justified in going like, to hell with them. They should have listened to me. Or they should have done it this way. Or they should have acted this way because look at all the work I put into it. And if you want to get out of this, if you want to understand how to be free of this, it's not from analyzing. And it's not even from compassion. Because what I sense is in the compassion is like, well, I know they're wrong, but I should feel for them. That is not the model that I want. We have to go way deeper into the heart. You have to go into your heart and go, people are imperfect. And they get irritated and they get self-righteous and they do what makes sense to them, even if on some level they know it's wrong. They do it because they can't help it. And you could say, well, they definitely could help it. Well, can you help everything that you wish you didn't do? No. Can I? No. This is part of the human condition right now. So the shift happens when your heart is open to the difficulty of life. And that people are interpreting your actions different than they are intended. But sometimes your actions are not cool. You might be putting burdens on people without realizing it, and they're actually appropriately responding to it. But then in our self-righteousness we go, you see? And we're offended because they don't do what we think they should do. So why don't we just humbly go, I don't know anything. I don't know if I'm putting out a funky energy and they're responding appropriately, or I'm putting out a correct energy and they're responding defiantly, or I'm putting out a confused energy and they're responding irritated. Not until I sit there and meditate and can get to a place of objectivity. And that will not happen until my heart is open, because if my heart is closed, I'm going to try to lean towards me being right and them being wrong. So how do I open my heart? Well, that's the mystery. In a way, you can't do it yourself. You have to pray for it. You have to invite God to open your heart for you. That's the part that, you know, us of us who are too masculine go, well, just tell me how I can do it. And actually, you can't. You just have to want it. You have to want your heart to be open in that capacity. And what happens when people think about opening their heart in that capacity? They don't immediately jump to, oh, how joyful and how free I would feel. They go like, how much the world will take advantage of me. How much more time I will have to place into these mundane and trivial situations. You go like, really? Why don't you see what happens? And stop letting your mind dictate how forgiveness, you know, and all this mentality that I'm trying to teach is going to lead to something bad for you. How about you have faith? And also go, what else have I got to do on the planet? What is so valuable in my time that I can't stop and be merciful to somebody who is at a different level of consciousness, who is acting in a way that that's all they can do right now. I mean, you'll get to a point on the path where you'll see this every hour of every day, the way people talk about stuff. I mean, I'm trying to get a squash game going. Oh, we can't, I'm nervous about this and that. In my mind, it's not even contagious. No, I'm not going to go out there and, the mystical church says coronavirus is not contagious, because that's kind of lacking in wisdom. But I'm not sure it's contagious, and I don't feel like the information is accurate, because you have medical doctors going, there's no proof that social distancing is helping. And we've been social distancing in this country now for 6 weeks, and it doesn't appear as though the curve is really flattening that much. Or they're reporting it in a way to make us more afraid to do more social distancing, which is kind of like, so should I sit there and hate all these people? Some of them are actually thinking they're doing what's right, and some of them are being deceitful. And it's going to be very difficult for us to know. How do you keep your heart open? Well, the people who, for example, go, we got to get Trump out no matter what. Deep in their hearts, they probably think they're doing the right thing. But they don't stop and go, how is this affecting all these other people? And plus, it's not the way to win an election. So there's no evolved consciousness in that. You got to get used to the fact that people are acting from a consciousness that you may not approve of. And when you're merciful, you allow for that. And you don't become offended by it. You go, that's how it's going to be. And it's going to get worse and worse, meaning the more you evolve, the more you're going to see that. You can't go out and say like, oh, the demons are having a field day on the earth now, aren't they? They're telling everybody to do all sorts of weird stuff to cause great torment and suffering. And they're going to go like, you need to be locked up. What if you're actually right? And then they end up putting you in jail, or they end up putting you in an asylum because they think you're crazy, but you're actually right. How are you going to love them then? I mean, we don't want to go to that extreme. But that's kind of the extreme that Jesus went to. So whenever you think about, well, I can't let them off the hook on this one, you go, trust me, you can. But it's a change of heart. It's not an intellectual process. Now, the teaching may have to reach you through your intellect, because your hearts are too hardened and too tight and too closed. And that's hard for some people to accept. Like, well, I don't really have a closed heart. From my perspective, you do. And I want it to be open so you're free. But it's painful, granted. It's painful in a way that when your heart is more open, you can feel the punches coming from people. Or you can feel the sadness in how they choose to live. And you can't say anything to move them in the direction of love, because they're self-righteously going to be stubborn. They're used to coping this way. They want to cause a little bit more torture for the other person that they feel angry at. How do you sit there and not... But you don't understand, you shouldn't do that. It's like, you got to let people do what they're going to do. God does that for you. So that's the message. If you want to learn how to forgive, I don't want to hear this, I'm trying. I mean, you got to try by doing what I'm saying, which is you have to pray that your heart open, and you have to care about people in a way that you may not want to. As long as you don't want to care, it's not going to happen. You can convince yourself, well, okay, I did this, so I can be compassionate. That's a step. But I want you to care about the suffering of every person, no matter how low their consciousness is. That's going to change your heart. And that's the most important thing that's needed on the planet, is that we care about each other enough to forgive the transgressions. It's like, oh, they're doing that because that's how they think right now. Damn, that's like the third time. Huh? That was an intense one. Jesus. Maybe that's my sign to all at the end of the sermon.